Got to shed some skin. All right, here we go. All right, we're here. We're here.
Thailand.
Come on.
Thailand.
Come on, we're here. Let's go. Bro,
Good to see you.
it is. You too. So good to have you here and to have a chance to connect and catch up and see where we're
I'm
at.
loving it, man. It's really good to have you guys here. It's a real honour to kind of share time with people that you know from previous lives in a new life and a new way of being and so on, and kind of do it congruently, not sort of just travelling here. We're actually here to be present and to find something out about ourselves, you know.
So true. And like I was saying, who would have thought, all this time later that we'd be here on the blimmin' other side of the world, all the way in Thailand, doing podcast and eating fruit and living off the land with crazy machetes and geckos and whatever else we can find. Now, with pets as well.
Yeah, man. 2 weeks in, we got a puppy. I couldn't believe it. I tell you, it's one of those things where we kind of set the intention to land here and put some roots down. But actually, and we kind of anticipated maybe getting a puppy at some point because we really wanted to just let ourselves in, really. 2 weeks in, and Alice gets some puppy eyes from a puppy on the side of the road, comes home and gives me the same puppy eyes, and we end up with a puppy 2 days later.
Become part of the family, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those really beautiful little synchronicities, and she's kind of just fitted into our life and brought so much love and joy and kind of just presence as well. Dogs and animals generally are so, they live in the moment, and when you're in the moment, then magic happens.
And Thailand, over here, the dogs are pretty rampant. They're all over the place, aren't they? So is that normal then, that people just give their animals away and pets and?
Well, they're all shagging all the time.
Okay, fair enough.
It's literally I don't know, you've probably seen there's puppies everywhere. There's always mums and pups everywhere. We just found this little pup. She was about 3 or 4 months old. And she's the last of a litter of 9. And just couldn't say no, really. There's little lovely eyes looking up, and she was feeling very sorry for herself. And I think people, they have a very different relationship with animals here, and with dogs especially. They're just dogs, they're in the background, they do their thing. Generally, that's general, but as those Westerners come along, see puppies on the side of the road, and they're fine saying free puppies, and you can't say no. So.
Very territorial as well, the dogs over here, I noticed. Like you'd be on your scooter just driving down the road and going past houses and sort of the dogs, so the dogs are sort of parked out on the street, on the road. That's where they create their little nest, and so you're driving past in your scooter, and dogs sort of lunge at you, and they let you know who's boss and whose territory you're coming to. Have you been nabbed by one yet?
We haven't. If I'm honest, I find it with dogs, they're very sensitive to how you respond to them, and we have it a lot on the beaches and so on, because Meta, obviously, she gets targeted by these guys a lot, and they always want to show who's boss. And Meta's learned that we are her pack, so when we're around, she suddenly grows testicles and thinks that she can, take over the world. She soon learns otherwise when there's a big dog running at her, but I found that just standing sternly and just saying no to any oncoming dogs, even if they're really, all that stuff, they're like, oh, all right, no worries, I'll back
good.
off.
Yeah.
And it's just a commanding of energy thing, really. Loads of Westerners come here and they're scared of the dogs, and it's like, why? They're all just dogs. You can make friends with them as easy as you can be scared of them, They're beautiful beings.
And people, the kids, we've heard reputation, that word that, the kids are pretty frightened of the dogs over here as well. Anyway, all beautiful beings.
Yeah.
All living as one.
Everything's a beautiful being. Anything that's sentient has the potential to be a beautiful being.
Bro, so good to have you here tonight. First time that, actually the first official podcast of Leaning In.
Okay.
And you're the first guest on.
Game on, I really appreciate it.
Who better to bring on than the man himself? So good to have you here.
Thank you.
We've known each other for what, about 4 years, eh?
What was it, like 6 months after you guys got together? Maybe.
2014, yeah, so it's about 4 years.
quite a while.
And it's been really cool following your journey all along. Obviously your best friends with my partner, so we've got to see you. Yeah, we've got to see you here and there along your journey and see how far you've come. And I just think you've got I thought, man, it'd be cool to sit down and have a chat and hear about your story and what you've been up to, and just seeing all the transformations and just witnessing your evolution as a man and as a being and as a spiritual soul. It's all been something really cool for us to follow. Simone and I were talking the other night about the journey. When you undertake the journey and you step outside, I guess that character or that persona that you've built up for yourself, and you get to see yourself in a different light. And when you take that journey, you decide to take it. It can be a pretty lonely place sometimes. You feel like you're sort of like going through all these realizations and start questioning everything, and you start waking up. Should I say? Start becoming more aware of yourself and about the things that around you, and conditioning and things that have shaped who you are as a person. And so it can be a pretty pretty lonely, scary sort of a route, which is something Simone and I were talking on our first podcast about. So meeting you in London and seeing you in London and your relationship with Simone has been a bit of a shining light for us, being in London, such a big city, 9 million, and everyone's sort of going about their business crazily, fast paced. But when you have someone that you can connect with and that you can build a really sort of find solitude and peace and be yourself completely, with no layers, with no masks, it's a pretty cool thing.
Thank you, man, and thank you so much for that introduction. And likewise, by the way, obviously, like you're saying, this, Simone and I have known each other. We've known each other since we're about 12, but we got close when I was we were both living in Notting Hill, maybe like 6, 7 years, something like that. And seeing you guys together, seeing you evolve especially, before this man came into your life, and then seeing you guys kind of knit and weave your way into this universe and create this version of relationship that suits you, has been really, really awesome to watch. And so right back at you, I really value this. It's an amazing thing to be authentic with people.
I'm feeling all the love in the room, just sort of raining down. It's a beautiful feeling. No, it's really good. It's so nice. Thankful for your word as well. It's so nice to have you here. And man, like I was saying, you've got such a cool a story to tell. And man, at various times we caught up in London, we've connected, and I just felt this sort of, what would you say, a real, I can see a lot of similarities in my journey and what I've been through in yours as well. And I think it's so interesting connecting with people that you have that sort of connection with sometimes, and you can, so you got such a cool journey, and I'm sure it'd be cool if you could share. You're obviously from which part of England?
So I grew up near Stonehenge, and grew up on a farm. Well, not quite on a farm, but my dad was a farmer, and we spent a lot of time on the farm as well. So I had very one of those very kind of organic and real upbringings where certain core values were instilled in us. Like, I grew up killing animals. I'm vegan now, by the way, and have been for 18 months or so.
We'll put some pictures up so people can see before and after transformation. It's crazy, crazy.
But I grew up in a very, very, very different world. We lived on the farm. We had animals on the farm. Very much bought into kind of a very old school way of thinking. Farmers are really wonderful people, and they're very gentle people on the whole. They're very kind, loving people, and it's quite a kind of old school way to live on the whole, unless you're on the cutting edge of what's happening. Unless you're growing wheat right now in California, or you're growing vegetables or fruit back in the UK or something like that. if you're still growing arable stuff and you're still rearing animals and so on, it's definitely being phased out right now, and I think that's a big thing. It's going to be really challenging for a lot of people. So I grew up with a lot of stuckness at the same time. It was wonderful to see both my parents self-employed. And I certainly learned a lot from them in terms of how to govern your own life and how to ensure that you are the boss. But they weren't really business owners, so they didn't rock up to work. Nothing got done. So I learned, the majority of my life I've been in business, so I learned some values then, which was to work for yourself, but I also thought, right, well, they're not getting rich, they're not actually creating any freedom particularly, they just get to write their own days a little bit, but they still have to work really hard. So I'm very, very grateful for that kind of paradigm, and I knew that there was more to go and look for. So I pretty much as soon as I left school, in fact while I was still at school, probably the last year, I started, just looking on YouTube a lot more, just looking for, I guess, answers as to like how do you progress from a version of who you were, i.e. the environment you grew up in, into something new, something better. And I use better in inverted commas because there is no better, it's just different. It's just actually the type of energy or not. And I knew that there was more freedom to be achieved. I knew that there was more money to make, which buys freedom in a lot of ways. I knew that there was a different level of kind of existing in the world that allowed more experiences to happen. Our lives were pretty samey, being a farming family. It was quite ritualistic, it was very habitual, and I had to break out of it, it felt very sticky. And I then went into, I was lucky enough, if you like, to inherit some money when I was 19, and it was enough to help me make some choices about what I did with it, but I wasn't intelligent enough to make it work for me particularly well at the time, or aware enough, 19-year-old kid. And it wasn't really enough to not do much, if that makes sense. So it helped, but it made me just about lazy enough as well, because I wasn't inspired. I didn't know what, I had no real passions at that time. I was quite overweight at the time as well. I didn't, I was eating a very, and I'll relate this to meat and dairy and so on as well, because it's relevant now that I know what I know about diet and health. So I was eating a diet that was keeping me energetically blocked as well. And it was just, I don't know, it was a progression of school really. I didn't know who I was, what I wanted to do. School was really uninteresting and boring to me. I like playing sports, but my body never held out for an entire season or anything, I don't think ever.
And you just got dropped the big pound of cash and... Yeah,
and it was kind of, I guess we always knew that we were going to inherit something, but age 15 I had the choice. My dad said to me, look, you're the only one who's worked on the farm before. So out of all the cousins and your brother and so on, and you're the oldest, if you want to take on the farm, then you can do so. But it was like the easiest no I've ever had, because I just thought, well, do I want my dad's life? And as much as I love my dad, and as much as I'm grateful for what he's been able to give me, no, I didn't want his life. That was his life, and you have that, I'll go do my thing. So I knew that there was some cash coming on the way, because we inherited from our grandfather a little slice of the farm each anyway. And when my dad left, obviously that got sort of liquidated effectively.
So how did you, when you're growing up and you said you felt a bit stuck and you felt like, things were a bit sticky, how did you, what brought awareness to the fact that there was a lot more going on outside?
The internet.
Yeah.
I just got hooked on personal development videos at a really young age, when people were talking about, you can do this and you can do that. And that wasn't a message that I heard as a kid, What I heard as a kid was, all careful and don't do that.
Yeah.
All that sounds risky.
All the safe stuff.
Everything was just negative, and I was like, oh, well, all right, all these barriers exist then, this cage exists, well, better stay in it. And I had no other understanding of reality. And so when I saw these videos of these supposedly millionaires, and a lot of them obviously are, or whoever they were at the time, talking about, you can invest in real estate without making money online. I bought into probably a whole bunch of scams as a youngster, because I didn't know any different. But, everyone who said you can be a millionaire on the internet was like, all right, thanks very much. But again, going down that and actually spending money on courses like that and ultimately not really making them work, it still connected with me with a new version of human being. It still made me aware that, well, hold on, people are living a very different life. Maybe there's some things I can learn. All right, this probably isn't what I'll end up doing, but maybe I can learn something here. And I think that's an attitude that I've always had. Even if something's not quite right, I'm like, yeah, but I'm still learning something, or I'm still connecting with people, or something's still good about this. And at some point, the shit bit will get so shit I don't want to do it anymore.
See, I think that's so, the fact that you're able to recognize that and be aware of it at quite a young age is pretty cool. There's a lot of people living, they're aware of things, they're aware that, maybe their circumstances aren't really where they want to be, or there's a lot more to life than maybe their current circumstances show. But, they're not, they don't know how to get out, they don't know how to break out of that. Where to go, what to do, what's the next step.
I mean, the biggest thing for me was actually a breakup. So, age 21, I had my first kind of proper breakup, and it just threw me into a bit of a tailspin, really. I had no idea how to be human. I just lost my head completely, and I was depressed as hell, really. It was probably the lowest thing I've ever felt. But it taught me so much, because I realised, well, hold on. And this is when I found personal development really properly and actually started going to seminars. Well, no, I had been to a few seminars, but I started buying seminars as opposed to just going to free ones. And it was at that time when I then invested some of this cash that I'd that I'd inherited, and I realised, well, hold on, if I do something intelligent with this money, then maybe I can sort of break out of this prison that's been created for me, because it wasn't mine. This was what I inherited. And I don't mean that in a really negative way. I just mean we all inherit our parents' thought patterns, and if they're not like the best possible thought patterns, then they're there to be broken down and rethunk. And unfortunately, most people never really end up doing much of that. Got a really good friend, actually. I won't mention any names, but Simone knows him from school days. And he grew up in a very Christian family. And they were a wonderful family. They were really loving, really kind, and so on. And he's now starting to realise, age 30, that it was having had, his parents have been through a divorce, and it's all been very messy, and all kinds of crazy stuff's been going on. Then I've started to realise, well, he's kind of coming to terms with the fact that an awful lot of what he thought he believed as a youngster was not true.
It was not his.
It wasn't his, but it was also not true. His whole belief system was given to him. He inherited it. It wasn't his belief system. He was just given it. And the same can be said, whether it's religion, whether it's about money, whether it's about relationships and love, whether it's about, I don't know, whatever it's about. If we're given a certain belief system about that thing as a youngster, it is our job as somebody who's becoming more and more aware to evaluate that belief system and give it a shake and a kick and see if it actually stands the test of reality. Or do we get to reshape it? Do we get to kind of look at it, tear it apart a little bit and find the holes in it, and then repatch it with something that's more reinforcing to an outcome that we'd like to receive? Because our beliefs create reality. And that was something that I was told by all these gurus when I was 20, 21 years old, especially after this breakup, that actually having these new beliefs installed has taken 10 years. A lot of the stuff that I've known for maybe 10 years now is only really now starting to become something that I'm able to really see happen in the world, actually actualize. And that's quite a strange, I guess, admittance in a way. We're all humans, so we all just bumble around half the time, I think, and we might be having fun, we might be being distracted by this, that and the other, and thinking that we're enjoying ourselves and having a great life, but actually we're just putting off the inevitable and probably increasing the size of the cliff that we'll have to fall off of at some point. And I was very aware of some cliffs that I was going to fall
coming your way.
At some point. All through my 20s I've known there's been cliffs coming, and then when they've come it's like, oh, but yeah, okay, I kind of saw this coming, so all right.
Bro, it's so interesting what you were saying about your friend who's 30, and there's a lot of people that go through that. They go through they're sort of cruising along on autopilot, and then all of a sudden something happened. It's like, I know some people call it midlife crisis, and little things that go on, and then all of a sudden it's this massive shock. What the hell? What? Because, we all know time is our greatest currency, right? And so, thinking, there are people who get to blimmin' 70 or 60 who still, who have just been autopilot the whole time, but...
and what a thing to have to come to terms with. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've met some sort of 16, 17-year-olds who've awoken to existence, if you like, at a much later age. And luckily by that point in time, life's humbled them enough to kind of go, well, I'll just be present for the rest of my life then and really enjoy it. And you meet some real badasses who wake up later on in life because they really experience quite a lot, But I don't know, something in me has always been, I don't know, and Simone will probably vouch for this, there's something in me that's just always questioned everything and not trusted any authority whatsoever. It doesn't matter who it is, even if it's a coach. I've had coaches since I was 21 as well, on and off, but since I was 21. But even then, something will feel out of congruency, or something will just feel off at some point, or they're not fully bought into my journey, or whatever it might be. And I'll be like, okay, well, this is coming to an end, I'm outgrowing this now. Something else to outgrow, another belief system to outgrow, something else's reality.
Is that little Toby in the corner at school, and the teacher's saying, "Hey Toby, come and join the rest of your class friends in class at the table," and you're sitting there going, nah, no way.
Just
do what I want to do.
No. It's like there's so many there's so many versions of reality that we get to once we start awakening to our own power and journey, not our own, but the power that's within us. Own suggests that we are it, which we aren't. And there's just any number of opportunities to create. And so why would you inherit somebody else's version of reality when you can go and make your own? And I've not ever really had the confidence in myself or the self-awareness to fully do that, but every single decision I've made has helped me shed a little bit more of old shitty beliefs and inherit some new, more empowering beliefs, whether it was around money or whether it was around love and relationships, whatever it might be, to eventually come to a point where I'm like, well, actually now every area of my life feels pretty good. I'm still working on some things, and I'm still, that could look better and so on, but I'm not attached to it needing to look better. I'm sure we'll talk about all kinds of fuck-ups I've had, but failing a lot has really been the biggest kind of awakening source, if you like, and then ayahuasca and all the stuff that came a little bit later, but failing a lot early, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in business, getting stuff wrong and cocking up a lot, is one of those things where you eventually just become immune to failure, and you go, well, there's always a lesson at the end of this. It really hurts for a little while, and then you come to realise something about what you were doing and how you can do it differently next time and so on. And I was very early to clock onto that, so I was never afraid really of failing. I just still didn't have the belief in myself to actually go after something that felt authentic, and I didn't know what authentic looked like. So I've still been unafraid of failing, I just haven't. I've been very afraid of putting myself fully out there because it's always felt, contrived in some way. I think a lot of people can relate to that. That's why there's not that many really successful podcasts, for example, because there's an awful lot of people that really feel quite contrived about how to speak. When there's a microphone in front of them, it's like, well, just speak. But I only get that now. The last year or so has been the time I've had interviews and stuff, and it's felt very natural, it's felt very effortless. Whereas before that, I was always putting on, it's a business podcast, so I'm putting on a business face now, where it's...
No masks here.
No, exactly.
Whatever comes up, then go with it.
But that's how as humans we should connect. We should be flowing and effortless and just real.
I was thinking about what you were saying about the the 30-year-old, or just an example is the best part about it is it's never nothing's ever too late. Yeah, you've lost time, but when you do come to that realization, which I feel that with the digital revolution and everything going on, and there's a lot more stuff going on, and everyone's starting to become a bit more aware of things going on, and people are talking, it's so out there that people are saying, it's awakening, and people are coming out of their little coma and starting to live a bit more. But yeah, obviously when you do get to that point, it's knowing it can be a journey in itself, just knowing where to start from there, right? You've woken up from this sort of, oh shit, I've been living this sort of existence that's not really mine. Cool. Okay, I'm here. I'm present now. Okay, where to from here?
Yeah, and I think there's different ways of taking things. You know, some people are able to have such a profound shift in who they see themselves as that they can literally just drop everything and go and do a different life, like literally go and be another human being. And there's a part of me that was really jealous of those people all through my 20s. So I was like, I know I want to do that, but I have no idea what it would look like, and I'm petrified of stepping out or something. And I think one of the first real tastes of that I had was after I got insulted by my boss. I've only been employed for about 10 months of my life. The first one ended when I got insulted on a conference call with our web team. And I was, put it this way, we had 4 billionaires on our board of 5, and all 5 of them, including all 4 billionaires, said, make him your CEO, to Caroline, who was her name, but the woman who owned it. And it was one of those moments where hearing that was very, very empowering, but at the same time when I then left, it was because on a call she said, oh, Toby, will you shut up? Because I knew stuff that she didn't, and I was like, no, we need to do it this way, like this is how this works, like let's take it through this process. And as soon as I got told to shut up by somebody who, quite frankly, has no right to tell me to shut up, I put their headphones down, turned off my microphone, I went, no, you shut the fuck up, and left. And that was, I've never had more adrenaline in my life, I don't think. It was, I walked out of the office and downstairs outside and was just panting. And I immediately called a mate of mine. But this is one of those situations where I really realised, like, the power that we have within us. You know, that energy allowed me to pick up the phone to a friend of mine, who's the CEO of a group of companies, and literally say to him, hey, remember you mentioned to me the other day that one of your companies has got a sales director role open. Can I have it? And he was like, what? No? Like, why would you have, what? No? You know, he was confused about it, but I was like, look, mate, really go. Well, at least let me interview for it. Anyway, when an interview, a week later, I walked into a new office as a sales director. I've never been a sales director, I've never really done any sales, but I have to talk to people. And that's all you need to do, you know. But it was one of those moments where you get to decide how much of reality you change. And like you were saying, you know, when you hit a certain age and you have some kind of awakening, how you use that awakening is entirely up to you in that moment. The adrenaline that you're feeling when you have that, oh shit, like, life isn't quite what I thought it was, and wow, there's so much more to it. Really overwhelmed, all that adrenaline that comes through, you get to choose in that moment what happens and how you use it. And momentarily, while all that's going on, while that cocktail's inside of us, like, we really have superpowers, and eventually you can then build yoga, meditation, fasting, etc. into your life to allow you to actually have superpowers. But in those moments, you get to tap into what's really going on, and you get to play with the matrix a little bit better. You get to manipulate time and space and create a reality that you'd never be able to create in any other situation. And it's pure energy, it's pure intention. And I just knew in that moment I was going to get a job. Just, there was no other way. It didn't matter that I didn't have any background. It was done. It was happening. And it did, and it was all on my terms, and it looked great. You know, it was awful in the end, and it wasn't what I needed to do whatsoever. It was what I needed to do for that short period of time. So, you know, when we hit these moments, it's one of those sort of decisions. How much of life are we happy with? And if we're not happy with very much of it, we can just drop everything then and run. Like, go and change everything. Change your environment, change the people you spend time with, change your daily habits, change your weather, you know, go and find somewhere sunny, because sun makes a massive difference to who we are, and everything can change in no time at all. And when you're on that flow of, I don't know what necessarily is next, but I'm just going to keep taking a step forward and I'm just going to keep going with it, that's when life starts to really just do this, you know, just waves upwards and starts to feel more authentic and starts to feel quite intimidating and scary at times, but very, very real.
So, I mean, yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? It's, you know, you can think of so many people who, you know, feel unfulfilled, they feel unhappy, but, you know, they don't really know where to go. And, yeah, you know, sometimes it takes, they're aware of what's going on, they're aware of the things, and it takes sometimes to open a new door is to take a stand, you know, and stand up for yourself. And
well, I mean, from your perspective, what was like one of those moments where you took a decision and decided to honour yourself over everyone else? What was the first moment that really felt that level of empowerment?
When I went to London, yeah. So 2013, I had, what happened? I had just had 2 years of teaching in New Zealand, and then I got my registration, and I got selected for a World Young Leaders Forum held in Japan. You know, I think it was like 220 world leaders from all over the world, from Costa Rica, from the Middle East, from Fiji, New Zealand. So we went on this incredible trip. Anyway, it was about 5 weeks long, and we, it was pretty full on. But I had left when I left New Zealand at the time to go on this trip. I had a whole lot of decisions to make. Like I was unemployed for the next year. I got my registration. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to play it out and see how I feel. You know, I've sort of achieved what I set out to do, and I went on this trip, and I thought, well, while I'm on this trip, I'll decide what I'm going to do when I get back. And I went on this trip, and everything. I met some people who had traveled all over the world at the age of like 21. I met CEOs of companies and business leaders, and even people, 23, 20, 24 who were my age. And, and just being in a foreign country, obviously, I love to travel. And basically, that experience, I'd made up my mind that I was going to go traveling. It felt right, and everything sort of seemed to click into place. And I was trusting that everything was going to click into place. It looked pretty hectic at the time, and I had nothing planned. But I had made up my mind, and I followed through on it, and took that step. And it's the most incredible feeling, just to, I guess, to honor yourself and to honor your word and to follow through on what feels right for you. And I think some people can get that mixed up with being some people don't want to be selfish, which is, they don't want to hurt anyone. They don't want to let anyone down. They find it too, they're worried about future prospects of their work and all these sorts of things. And for a lot of people, that keeps them not moving, not doing anything, just sort of staying where they are. And, and then we 30 years flies, and then they have that moment of, I should have, or I could be here. And that's not a nice place to be. It's not at all. No.
Well, I'm grateful, and I'm sure the world is going to be grateful for that awakening point for you. Because honestly, mate, you've got a lot of energy and a lot of love to give, and I'm really excited for your journey as well. So, 5 years ago, when you decided to come to London, and I met you through Simone, and that was a cool moment. It was an interesting one as well, because it was a strange time for you guys. It was really early on with you guys. So.
Sure was, yeah.
It was cool.
Finding boundaries at the time, wasn't it? Yeah, still getting to know in a relationship, you're early on, and still finding boundaries and I guess getting to know each other on not just on a physical point or anything like that, but deeper as well. Interesting times. I actually walked up to Tesco that night. I remember I got sent away. To go and get some steak.
That's all right. I remember that. I do remember that.
How was the steak, by the way?
A long time ago.
How different are we would look today?
Oh.
Yeah, no meat in the household. So for people listening, we Toby's been for a massive, and be cool to hear your story as well, but you've been for a massive physical and internal transformation. So what was your previous weight, roughly?
So I used to weigh about 112, well, average about 112 kilos, but up to about 118 at one point, which is 21 stone.
A whole lot of 21 stones.
I was consistently like 18 and a half stones, something like that. So I was big.
Which is like, I don't know, for Jonah Lomu, like a wrestler type size, isn't it? You're pretty tall.
I'm 6'4".
Yeah, you're pretty tall.
Kind of carrying it, but I was not at the same time. It was obvious that I was fluctuating, and now I weigh 80 kilos.
So that's like a 30 kg.
32, 35 kgs, which is about 4.5 stone.
Which is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's all come. Well, I'm actually going to suggest that it's probably all come from love, because basically it started when. Don't get me wrong. I've been aware of fasting, and I've been aware of juice cleansing, and I've been obviously waking up to consciousness and what consciousness means and so on over the last 4 years, especially since working with ayahuasca and doing normal meditating and stuff like that. But when I met my now partner, I don't know, it was like somebody saw me and loved me more just for me than anyone ever had. Now, that's not to say that throughout our relationship she hasn't become aware of things that she thought I was portraying to her that turned out not necessarily to be true. But those were her assumptions. You know, we all assume certain things about somebody when we're, and those aren't things that I have any control over. But yeah, when she came into my life and said, "Hey, listen, this is the way I live," and she was 90% fruitarian, and that's roughly what we stick at, probably 95% now. Ate the odd salad, had all these radical ideas about not drinking water and veganism being the only way for the progression of humanity, and more specifically fruitarianism being our natural species-specific diet. By the way, you can probably hear I've got a cold at the moment. I'll talk about that in a bit. But
You're good, bro. You're good.
It's a manufactured concept. So when I had this injection of love, it just instantly, so literally from day one, I said it was the 1st of August, I think, our first day. And it went incredibly well. We were very, 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 very into each other straight away. And I just went, you know what? After August, I'm going to go vegan and just see how we go. And I've never really done anything like that for that extended time. Like 30 days is quite a long time to kind of try something. And we hung out quite a bit, but she kind of gave me a few pointers. She also she's a fasting specialist, and we now work together, fasting specialists. But she had some ideas about how to break your fast in the morning or not the morning. So we dry fast generally until late morning or midday. And then we used to break our fast with orange juice, and we used to drink liters and liters of this stuff. And then we basically have nothing really but orange juice or fruit all day, and then a big salady meal with a sweet potato or something in the evening. And so for those 30 days, I largely went like that. Obviously, new relationship, we're trying to go out for dinner and stuff, but you can't really go anywhere when you eat like that. So we found a couple of restaurants. I was living in Toby in the UK at the time, that could serve some food that we'd enjoy, but again, most food had too much things in it that ended up feeling like the doctor's up, especially for Alice. So yeah, I don't know really, that 1 month, just afterwards I would just have no desire to go back, because I was like, well, I feel better, I lost some weight, and I lost like 1.5 stones in a month. And it wasn't like I was trying to lose weight, it was just a different way of living. My energy was higher. I had been ill a lot, and now I realise what illness is. It's simply the body parity, it's just getting rid of mucus, basically.
It's all good. I can hear you. Can everyone else hear him? Yeah, I think it's good.
And so, I just kind of progressed on with it. And I knew that ultimately, having had this education of fasting and so on, I knew that there was so much more to explore. I knew that cellular cleaning, effectively, and the result of cellular cleaning was a profoundly different life, and one much more aligned to nature, and much more aligned to our true power, not as the I, not as the identity, but the power that we have the capability of allowing to flow through us.
It's so interesting. We because we did a post on Project Hero Rise, our new movement that we've started, a community that we've built, talking about getting clarity, and we provided a couple of tips to our followers and to everyone else in the community. And one of them was about how to get clarity when things are all scattered and things are all over the place. And fasting is it's a pretty phenomenal tool to use, especially when you do need to clear your thoughts and everything else that's going on, and just be totally in tune with yourself and the feeling as well in your body, everything that goes through you.
It brings up so much.
Yeah.
It's one of these tools that is in every single spiritual text as one of the number one awakening tools, and yet nobody reads that bit. Even all the real spiritual nuts out there, and I'm not judging, but there's a lot of spiritual nuts in the world. Even they don't fully understand the power of fasting, even if they've read their Bibles or their whatever. But you've just got to look at any of these enlightened beings. And by the way, I'm not speaking from a place of. Every single one of us has the potential to effectively be a Jesus, an enlightened being of some sort. We all have the potential to awaken to that level, whereby we can do magic, quite literally. And so the fact that this is written in every single text on the planet, and if you then go back to the more original text in the East, and the bases of Hinduism and so on, you start to realise that, hold on, actually humans are not what we've been told we are. And fasting is one of the most powerful tools to start really truly realising what we are and what we're capable of. And I could not be more grateful for having that introduced to me. Yeah, it's hurt a lot. Yeah, it's hurt to let go of eating greasy burgers and amazing steaks at Cow in Tunbridge Wells. Shout out, but I don't go there anymore. But whenever we're eating all these sorts of foods, I think there's a part of every single one of us that knows, hold on, I know that this isn't really good for me. I know that this is it's tickling my ego, and it's a nice experience right now, and I can really indulge in it. But when has this indulgence ever really been a great idea for progression, especially if we do it too often? So yeah, that was kind of my introduction to it.
So getting people to give up hamburgers and fish and chips, and New Zealand, we love our pies there and all sorts. It's not, yeah, man. It's but for people that are interested in fasting, it's such an amazing tool, and it's worth a try. I think for people who are really stuck, who can't seem to get clear on their thoughts, who just want answers, want things to come to them. Fasting is a great way. You find out what your attachments are and what's going on. You're not able to fully see things so clear that you can then put a plan in place to rejig what needs rejigging in your life and be more in alignment with how you want to live and who you want to be.
And we always get a gift. There's something that we always tell our clients, and that's, you'll always get a fasting gift, and it will become life, whereby life is just a gift. But in the early days especially, whenever you do more than a 3-day fast, life always goes, here you go, something cool, something awesome always happens afterwards. And one of the biggest things for us was when we did a 7-day fast over Christmas 2017. And it's quite a ballsy thing to do, fast over Christmas, but we didn't really have any money, and I'm sure we'll talk about business and all craziness at some point, but didn't really have any money, and didn't really want to go to any of our families, with all due respect to them, we just didn't. So we literally just chilled and decided to do a fast over Christmas, and Alice did a 7-day dry fast. And most people think you die after 3 days without water. Well, you do if you're toxic, but actually your body is capable of doing far more than that. Some of our mentors have done, I think the longest one I'm aware of is 17 days dry, which is profound, Jesus did 40, so, it's getting there. And I'm not, everyone will have Jesus complex and all that nonsense, but it's just a disciple, an example of a disciple, an enlightened being, enlightened master. And I did a 7-day, what's called a master fast, which is grape juice and lemon, which is quite an intense detox, so it's quite an aggressive detox. And 7 days on that isn't massively long. We're part of a group where the full master fast is 108 days, which is one of the most profound things anyone can ever go through.
108 days straight. Wow.
Grape juice and lemon, yeah. So, this has done a 17-day one of those, I think. 23-day one of those, something like that. So we got to the end of that, and then literally the day afterwards I got a call from one of my own business partners saying, hey mate, how's life looking? Why don't you come out to Lithuania and we'll do some stuff together? And it was one of those things where I was just I put the phone down and said to Alice, do you want to live in Lithuania? And she went, yeah, alright, it's different, we don't really need to be here, or we don't necessarily want to be here, we don't want to be anywhere specifically, so yeah, sure. And so literally a week later we packed off and went to Lithuania. And that was kind of the first step that led us here, because that was only less than a year ago. Fasting is always going to give you a gift. We've had that every single time we've ever done a fast.
Well, I remember the first time I fasted. I think it wasn't even a fast. It was more like what do we call it? Like a cleanse, isn't it? Yeah.
The water.
Yeah, I did a couple of hours and then straight back into the ham.
I went to visit Moihu at work. No, I'm speaking to you, Moihu.
Yeah, come on.
So I'd been doing it, and I thought, you know what? Let me just go check on him, see how he's doing. And I go, and check on him at work, and I just see him standing up, and he looks so out of it.
Really?
Like he was there in body, but nothing else. He was just so glazed over. I was like, okay, maybe you just need to, cut this fast, and we'll revisit.
So it's fasting is just like anything. You just have to if you want to get better at it, or you want to try something new and see results, and you just got to stick with it and go with it.
And you've also got to be kind to yourself. A lot of people are very, very, very militant about, well, I said I was going to do 3 days, or I said I was going to do 7 days, 10 days, whatever. But you know what? Sometimes life happens, and sometimes stuff gets in the way, and we can do everything to prepare ourselves for, giving ourselves a nice, easy existence and a nice, easy kind of road, perhaps, if you're doing a fast. But sometimes something gets in the way. Sometimes something will happen that brings up a lot of emotions, and suddenly it becomes unbearable, and we just have to knock it on the head a little bit. That's okay. We can revisit that stuff.
Especially when it's something so different such as fasting. It's like someone who might want to lose a few kgs, who's never trained in their life, and then they have a personal trainer who just smashes them like they would to an athlete or something in the first session. It's just like you got to take it step by step and not be so hard on yourself, but just stick with it and go with it.
Unless you have a chronic condition, in which case you need to go all in from day one. Hopefully you've had the realization that is the decision that you need to take. Ultimately, everything comes down to our intention. If we decide to do something, and commit to it, and committing is a bit of a false pretense in a way. It's a bit of a false what's it called?
A thing?
A false prophet.
Oh, yeah.
Commitment is the shadow, if you like, of devotion. And when we devote ourselves to something, that's a true commitment. That's commitment in the being.
Yeah.
Whereas commitment is a decision, which is still in the doing. When we devote ourselves to something, and quite often if we've got something chronic, or if the medical industry has defined ourselves as having something chronic, then we should choose to devote ourselves to a different way of being, because the one that we've been living has got us in a whole lot of shit.
And which tends to be the case, isn't it? Like something's gone down, like we were saying, a surprise in life, and then all of a sudden it's forced you into gear. It's forced you into force you back against the wall kind of thing. It's like time to take action and to move and to to start living whatever's gone down. Pretty interesting. After boarding school, so 18, 19, 21, had all this cash, broke up with your girlfriend, and then where to from? So you started to become interested in courses and
by this time I already had the money when I was with this particular girl, but money is one of those another false prophet. It doesn't really do anything but amplify who we already are. At that point in time, it was really boring. I was really closed within myself. Didn't really know who I was. I was quite afraid of a lot of things, but I covered that up with a bit of a boisterous and quite an external, which is something we've had to shed in so many different ways and so many different manners over the last 10 years, and still doing so. There's always times when we realise, oh, hold on a minute, that's not true, that's not me, that's not real. But less and less, hopefully now. So I just went looking for answers. I'd already invested in mentors at that point, so myself and my first business partner, the guy actually who invited me out to Lithuania, we invested in some property mentoring. So we paid a guy to teach us how to sort of buy and renovate and rent out properties for profit. But again, it was like, I don't know if as a listener, if you've ever Googled how to make money and so on, but the classics of internet marketing, property, and trading, or forex. And so these are four entities of versions of you that you have to sort of step into. And okay, you can eventually become you again after you've gone through the lessons and so on. But for me, whenever I was learning about anything like property or like internet marketing or whatever, it felt like I was having to take on the identity of that, being that person. And it felt like I had to do that for far too long before I scream effectively, and then just need to shut it off and go, no, I need to find me. This is just a tool, this is just a thing, this is just a method of creating wealth, for example. So yeah, we'd already invested in property mentors, and we were trying to do some deals down in the southwest of England, but it wasn't very familiar, below market value acquisitions and stuff. It wasn't a great market for it down in the southwest, and it was very challenging. So, and then when I broke up with somebody, this girl, I became useless, and James had to basically carry it. And we did end up managing to do a couple of deals, and James was the one who led that. I'm so grateful because, you know, it was a time when I was really on my arse and I just didn't know how to function. And I was, to be around, I must have been dreadful. Take my house to the guy playing it. He's had to put up with a lot, as you can over the years, at various different times.
Shout out to James.
Massive shout out to James. He's a legend. He's living in Portugal now, and he's got a really good life. He's got two girls, and then he's amazing. So that time then when I had that breakup, that really led me to then invest in myself. I was like, I went to one of these seminars, and the guy on the stage was talking a lot about mindset and a lot about how to create a different reality by thinking differently, and it just spoke to me, and I was like, well, I don't like the way I feel right now. I don't like the fact that I'm crying on a daily basis. I don't like the fact that I don't like myself. I don't like the fact that I'm not confident, and if I try to be confident, it comes off as arrogant, or at least it doesn't come off as real or genuine. And I just went, I don't like any of these things about myself. So, and this guy seemed to solve some problems. He seemed to have a lot of answers. So I paid him a lot of money and ended up going on other courses. And it was definitely one of the best things I've ever done. You know, in hindsight, don't get me wrong, I by far didn't take on all the lessons. I was a kid still, you know, and I was going through a tough time. So I was quite blind to a lot of what I was being taught. You know, we can have two people sitting in the same room, but if one person's ready to hear what the person on stage is telling them, and the other person is distracted by a whole load of emotional bullshit, they're going to have very different outcomes from a week in that seminar room, for example. So, you know, everything works at the right time for the right person. Like I said, he just spoke to me, and over the course of the next 8 months, I went on all of his trainings, learned about NLP, learned about hypnosis, learned about the mindset of billionaires, went to Portugal, went to something called Billionaire Bootcamp.
What was his name?
The guy who ran the seminars was a guy called Chris Howard.
Okay.
And he's kind of like a Tony Robbins, if you like. He was never as big as Tony, and I think he's gone in a slightly sort of different direction now. But you know, he was a magician on stage, and he was very charismatic and very, very engaging, and literally just sort of spoke to me. And I ended up becoming, well, I wouldn't say close friends, but I'm connected with all of his trainers and stuff, the guys I work with on Facebook, and we have great banter and stuff still today, and obviously it's a very different relationship now. We sort of see one another as human beings on our own individual journeys, as opposed to me being a kid and a student and then being a teacher, which I definitely felt a bit like at the time. You know, it was a different kind of school room, but one that I really wanted to be in. And I definitely grew a lot during that year, and I met a lot of people on a lot of different journeys who were living in a very different reality to me, and I was like, well, still, there's a lot here that I'm still not getting clearly. I can talk the talk, and I can say the right words and so on, but something's not happening, it's not clicking, because I'm not getting the same results as these people and so on. So I was still very much in searching mode again.
So when you broke up with your former partner, and I mean, obviously, would it be fair to say that, you know, you're based on your previous conditioning, that was sort of like an awakening in terms of or the ego or the character or the persona that you had already built up to that point?
The feeling I had when it happened was one of absolutely knowing that it was going to happen. When she was saying the words, I was like, I know these things, like she was telling me all the things that she wasn't happy with. I was like, I know, I just don't know how to do any different. I just don't know what that looks like or how to be that. And I guess it was almost like it sort of in a way, or autism. You know, I think in some way or another we're all autistic to the blind spots that we don't have. You know, we're all very dumb sometimes as well when it comes to the areas of life that we haven't had light shed on.
Yeah.
And that can be really challenging to be awakened to, but she just gave me some truth bombs. And when I said, look, I know these things, and I will be different, she just went, no, I'm done. And it just was like a stake through my heart, and I didn't know who I was. You know, I'd wrapped up so much of my identity in her and in my relationship and in our daily activities together and so on, and it felt very felt very. Because we hadn't created very much together, it was very much me. I went and lived with her and her mum actually at the time in this massive house, so it wasn't as if we were stepping on each other's toes or anything, but it was so much of her life that I was buying into. It wasn't something that we were creating together, so it wasn't very conscious at all of me. It was just better than my own existence. So I went, well, I'll do this then. And she was hot, so that was cool. But it wasn't real, you know, and it wasn't real. So when she said those things, it just, fucked me completely.
Because there's a lot of people that that go through something similar, like a breakup, or it could be lost a job or whatever it might be, and it seemed like your whole world has come crumbling down. And some people, for some people, they find it really difficult to break out of that mindset. But it's all it is. It's mindset, and it's your perspective of the situation and what the lessons are that are there to be learnt, and how you incorporate those and how you take them in, and that really really creates the most impact, really.
Yeah, it's absolutely all about what is it that we're actually aware of in any given time. Whenever something's going tits up in our lives, it's the universe giving us if it's going really tits up, it's the universe giving us a real good slap or a train crash. It's something it can really hurt. But ultimately, it's still the universe tapping you and saying, hey, pay attention. Like, there's a lot for you to learn right now. Pay attention.
It's like paralyzing fear and anxiety and whatever else might be, and insufficiency in terms of your self-esteem and everything else.
Absolutely. And whenever something goes really wrong and against what our desire is, what we'd like as an outcome, it threatens our identity. It threatens the very core of who we are, especially if we've enrolled a lot of who we believe we are into that thing. So quite a lot of that, that happens when we lose a job sometimes, or when we lose a relationship, or when we lose a business, or unfortunately it can happen really big time when it comes to death and so on as well. People lose a family member or something, and they realise, well, actually I enrolled an awful lot of my identity into who I was with this person. And that's a really, really tough pill to swallow for people, but ultimately, again, through death is a huge amount of lessons that we can learn. And I'll share a story just because it's quite pertinent, but just 2 weeks ago, Beth and I do a lot of fasting. We live largely on fruit, as I said. And sometimes we don't quite... We're not as disciplined with breaking fast and so on as we perhaps should be if we've done a deeper fast. And she'd done some dry fasting, and we've been on coconut water for 2 or 3 days only. And we're living in the sun, and we're at the saddle day, so we're quite light. We're very, very kind of floaty a lot of the time. And we ended up going into a market in Tungsala, and we had something that we probably shouldn't have done. It was still fruit, but it was very, very high sugar content. And Alice got very lightheaded and ended up passing out. And it happened in a way that I saw it for what it was at the time, and I saw it for the journey that she was going on. And I kept my cool to begin with. I was just holding her and whispering to her, everything's going to be okay, and you're going somewhere right now, but I don't know where you're going, and look wherever you are, make sure you learn whatever you're supposed to learn, and I'll see you soon. I love you. And then she didn't wake up, and then her eyes started rolling in the back of her head. And I started to get quite panicky, and I started to have a full-on adrenaline rush and a panic, full-on like, oh, what the fuck's happening? And I started shouting for the ambulance, and I started really kind of panicking. At which point, and when all the Thai people around us were also, she'd been out for maybe a minute and a half or something, so it was getting to the point where I was like, what is happening right now? It's not just a faint. Anyway, they were wafting all these really smelly things under her nose, and she eventually kind of came back to. And I realised in an instant, absolutely in an instant, when her eyes did connect back with mine, and she looked absolutely petrified, oh, I need to be something else right now. This tearful, panicking version of me doesn't exist right now. It cannot exist. This person needs me. And instantly, I just turned it all off. Took a really deep belly breath, and that's a really important thing in these moments. Our breathing goes into our chest when we've got, when we're reactive. And I just started to talk to her again in a really calm, loving way, and I just said, hey, welcome back, it's all good. You're cool, you're cool. And I was smiling because I knew exactly what was going on. I knew exactly what she'd just been through. I knew where she'd been.
And everything shifted as well.
Everything shifted. My experience of life shifted massively in that moment. I realised what devotion meant. I really realised how much this person meant to me. But also, it gave me an insight into what are we independently again as well now. Like how do we get to show up as Toby and I as opposed to Toby and I? Because we've certainly been a couple together for the last 18 months since we've been together. It's been a very immersive relationship. And I'm very grateful for that in a lot of ways, but it's transitioning now. And that was one of those moments where I was like, whoa, well, what if that was the end? Who am I here? Like, am I me here still, or am I going to feel lost? And so really over the last couple of weeks I've been thinking a lot about that and realising, no, actually I can own this life too. Like, this feels amazing for me, as me. But yeah, those moments that we have sometimes when...
Do you scratch it on the shoulder?
There's mozzies.
Oh, okay. Mosquitoes, we've got friends in the room.
So yeah, it was those moments when they come, it's an opportunity to realise we're having an experience, a different kind of experience. Getting sprayed, I like it. Bring on the attention oil. Yeah, we get to see how we respond in a challenging situation and go, right, well, what does the response look like to this overreaction? Especially when somebody else's reality is dependent upon it. You know, if they're in an incredibly vulnerable situation and you're in the care of somebody, or you're caring for somebody or something, it's a big wake-up call to say, what is it that, how are you choosing to respond to life?
Especially when something unexpected happens. It's like almost like so easy to take things for granted, and until something happens, then all of a sudden your whole world just shifts and gets put into alignment, with who you really are. And I mean, there's things that are obviously out of our control, and then there's things that are in our control as well. And it's finding that balance between the two. Sometimes you can get whipped into shape because you haven't been listening, because you haven't been in tune with yourself and everything else that's going on around, or sometimes we we make dumb decisions and have to learn from them. Yeah. You've all been there.
It's just to wake up to them hopefully not being too dumb, and just start. I heard a great quote one time, which was that life will tickle you with a feather, and if you're not sensitive enough to the energies of your life, then you'll get a little bit of a slap by the universe. And if you're not able to take that, think of the slap as an illness or something like that. Not a very bad illness, but a bit of an illness, or maybe like stubbing your toe, or something that hurts, but it's not very bad. And then if you ignore that and you're not still paying attention, then life will punch you, and that will be more like a bit more of a serious illness, or maybe a 3-month-old relationship ending or something like that. And if we still can't ignore that, then we'll get a breakthrough in our eyes, and that will be something that really takes our knees out, but it won't be the end. And if we really don't know how to respond to that, and we still don't realise that we're being asked to pay attention to life, then a bus will come along and just take us out, and that will be a metaphorical ego death, where a marriage breaks down, or we get defined with cancer, and obviously there's a lot of belief around what cancer is for people that feels like it's the end, it's obviously so yeah, there's a whole bunch of kind of stages, if you like, to sensitize into life, and we get to be more sensitive if we are paying attention all the time. If we're more aware of what's happening, what feels like it's happening to us, we get to go, well, is it actually happening to us? Is it happening for me? And if I pay attention to it, what has it got to show me?
And I'm just thinking about a lot of just punching, tapping you on the shoulder, screaming in your ear, and just trying to let you know what's going on, and giving you a little inkling, and waiting for you to take action and to step into that place. And then all of a sudden, before it's too late, something's gone down. It seems to be a pretty repetitive, common thing that happens in a lot of people's lives as well.
Big time, and again, the severity of these things can be mitigated when we've surrounded ourselves with cool people who get it, who get the journey, and are able to say, hey, listen, you're paying attention to this, because I think this is something that could bite you in the arse at some point or something. If we can surround ourselves with friends who are able to be honest with us, one of the greatest gifts we can ever give somebody is, hey, listen, might not be something that you're necessarily aware of right now, but I can see some stuff that could be going wrong maybe here, and I'm not judging you, I'm not saying anything about that, I'm just saying maybe pay a little bit more attention.
Which is why fasting's so good.
Yeah, yeah, hones you in, just, bullseye is shown in its clearest day.
For sure. Man, we could go on and on. What about health? Like, what are you doing working out? And like, obviously with the fasting, because a lot of people say, well, you know, I want to exercise, I want the energy to go to work. You know, it's had a profound effect on your transformation over time, and it's been over a long period of time. Is that right? Have you maybe a good year that you've sort of got really honed into fasting?
Well, yeah, it's 18 months now, or about 16, 17 months, yeah.
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of people say, well, you know, I want to work out and I want to train. So how do you incorporate that into?
One of the biggest lessons I learned because I ended up, you know, living with a fasting specialist and somebody who wanted to be a fasting specialist at the time. You know, she was like, I've acquired all this knowledge, I've practiced on myself, I've helped family and friends, you know, and now it's time for me to help others. You know, I want to put myself out there. So I effectively got I was her guinea pig, effectively. And it wasn't an intentional thing, it just happened. I wanted to take these decisions, and she's really grateful for my sort of fluidity with it as well, because I think it was really important for her that she was with somebody who was able to understand why she's how she's come to certain beliefs, and the truth in them. And I've always been a truth seeker as well. I've always been somebody who's like, well, yeah, maybe a little bit, but I think there's something deeper here. You know, there's something more that can be discovered. I had the accelerated version of what's possible with fasting, definitely, as if I had a chronic disease, basically. That's kind of how diligent we went with it. But at the same time, we'd still, you know, if we found a nice vegan restaurant, we'd go and, you know, Mildred's in London, for example, or some Mushi's in London, you know, a bit of vegan junk food occasionally. And we also, we smoked quite a lot of weed in our time, so, you know, munchies is obviously one of those things that makes you eventually make worse decisions. You know, initially it can be something that can really help you and be an incredibly enlightening experience, but after a while you just get really hungry. And, you know, when you're still in certain patterns, then that's not a good thing. You don't want to be hungry when you've still got patterns around food, because it makes you make poor decisions. I pretty much straight away went 80% fruit and 20% salad and sweet potato. That was my diet.
I mean, there's so much content and so much information and so much shit out there. Yeah. I want to say shit, but there's so much stuff and it's so overwhelming. So you can understand why, you know, people seem confused or they don't know where to go, and it's just like it's in your face, consuming. But you know, the beauty of life is you get to experiment and you get to try things, and it's all about, you know, trial and error, and you know, if you don't try, you never get the chance to know or to feel or to anything else. So it's definitely something like with my experience with fasting, it was chipping away at it, you know, until you really get to a point where you can really feel. Until I really felt, you know, what it was all about.
Yeah.
And then I started to get, you know, that once you've taken the action, then the motivation and the encouragement and the desire is there to explore further.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that people don't do in the world, whether it's implementing a business strategy or it's implementing a health strategy or it's implementing a relationship strategy, one of the biggest things that people don't do is actually try it on. You know, this new identity, this new way of being, try it on, see how it fits. Like, it's not going to fit particularly well probably to begin with, whatever it is, but try it on and see what does fit well, see what aspects of it you can integrate. And until something becomes experiential, until something becomes something that you've proven for yourself, it's not real. You know, you can read, Alice and I post regular posts about the truths that we've discovered about health, you know, what really is possible with the human body and what's possible in terms of what we're able to consume. And you're either ready to read it or hear it, or you're not. And it's not to say that it is the truth, the only truth, but it is to say it kind of lines up with all these principles from all these different texts from old. It kind of lines up with the higher energy that we feel. You know, we can walk into nearly any room and genuinely bring more love into that room. You know, people will feel better because somebody who has cleared themselves out is there. You know, the presence of you guys in any room lights it up. You know, I feel it when I'm around you guys. You're very calm and loving, influential energy. And when you do this work, that's what you become in the world. And it's when we realise that, but don't attach ourselves to it, that we get to actually really be that in the world. Fasting is just one of the most phenomenal tools for it. It keeps everything down.
You know, if you think about it, it's something that has a physical, emotional, mental, so mind, you know, your mindset, and then you've got the spiritual side as well, which comes into it. So it encompasses everything, but just from fasting, yeah.
Absolutely, and obviously there's a lot that you can do to emphasise all the different areas as well. You know, when we take people through programs and stuff, we integrate meditation, we integrate yoga.
Yeah, it leads you down a whole, you know, new path there of exploration.
Like, how do we implement and help people bring more awareness to themselves and so on? And all these tools, all these ancient tools, which are tools to enlightenment, you know, that's why they exist. They just boost the power of the fast. You know, they just make that fast much more powerful because you're suddenly focusing on becoming aware of the emotional side, the mental side, and the spiritual side, not just the physical release. And ultimately, when you do, as I'm just going right now, when you just focus on the emotional release, which I've done a lot of over the last month, the physical has to catch up at some point. And over the last week, Alice and I have been full on flu symptoms. You know, Alice hasn't had a fever in more than 10 years, and she was literally in bed all day 3 or 4 days ago. Which is profound, really, but we've had some massive outbreaks, you know, passing out in public and going through an experience like that is a very, very, very shifting experience to go through. And my experience of that when she went through it was also very, very, very shifting. And so many things have happened since as well that just mean that a physical symptom relief seems inevitable. But when we don't judge it as sickness and try and numb it with paracetamol and all the other nonsense, then we get to actually get the gift of it as well, which is okay, this is a code. Everything's good.
And that's been your choice to go deeper and deeper and deeper as you've experienced, and all in your time, based on your journey and where you're ultimately wanting to lead to. Yeah.
Something in me has always gone, oh, it hurts. Well, how much could it hurt?
A bit more.
Could it hurt?
Yeah.
And I had this experience with ayahuasca. You know, there's something about the ayahuasca journey that when you realise, okay, if something's challenging, like if this is hard, right, turn it up. Like, turn it up as high as it can go before I don't need it anymore. Because if you turn it up as high as it can go, and then you realise, all right, I'm still okay, and I feel way lighter now, and I've got rid of a whole bunch of shit, life's going to be better. You know, like when you realise that nothing's going to be that bad, and that ultimately you live in a illusion and you dream anyway, if you treat life like a dream, like, you get to play in it that much more. And all of these things, all of these purges, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, if we just let it out and let it teach us what it's there to teach us, we get to live a very profoundly different experience of life. You know, and it gets to be a lot more loving and joy-filled and effortless, actually, you know. So when you come back to your question, like, what does my training regime look like? I have barely trained over the last 18 months. I did a little bit while I was still in.
You're looking pretty good, man.
But this is the thing. I had some muscle mass beforehand, you know, I was quite chunky and quite strong, but ultimately it comes down to like vision.
So defined.
But it's vision. It's what do I want to look like? Cool, see that in my mind all the time. I know that time-space is something that I can manipulate. I know that space is something that I can choose to have a different experience of, you know. If you show my book before and after, it doesn't really show it, but the biggest thing I get is, wow, your face looks different. Like, your face is actually a different shape. It's not just that you're not fat anymore. It's just that you have a different structure.
Yeah.
And when we give ourselves love, and when we show ourselves love in all these different ways, whether it be meditation, our diet, our rituals, massages, how easy we are on ourselves about things. If something goes wrong, or if we have a challenge with something, and if we don't beat ourselves up about stuff, we start showing ourselves more love. It physiologically affects us on so many levels, and I don't think this is something that's really, no one really understands what's possible. I think I want to be an example of what's possible for the vessel, you know. It's like there's consciousness flowing through this, there's consciousness flowing through you, there's consciousness flowing through Simone. How do we get out of the way of that consciousness enough to allow the greatest expression of that version of consciousness to come through. And it's not us. There's no identity to it. It's not me, Toby Street, does this, and that's who I am. It's just, this is the expression of consciousness in this, at this point in time. And I want that to always be evolving. I've not been very good at expressing that in my life, and it really feels like as a result of this transformation and this time and this space here, especially because I know it is an incredible environment and energy space to be in, it really feels like the time is coming, it's really, there's a lot of energy going around and shifts going on that allow people to show up in whatever way they want now.
Yeah, so interesting, because environment is so key, so important, so key, and can be key. It's not the most important thing, but it is really does play a factor if you want to, if you want something different, if you want to shed a bit of skin, you want to detach for a bit, get your own space, get your head right. Sometimes just moving into a new environment is the perfect, a perfect avenue to follow in that regard. But
you guys have been doing that a lot over the last couple of years.
we have.
You guys have learned so much on that journey, and that's an amazing gift to give yourselves.
We have, and every environment's taught us different things as well. And we've kind of moved around at our own pace and gone with what we felt at the time, and then drifted towards where we felt drawn to, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it's cool. We can definitely feel the energy around here on the island. So we're in the Gulf. What would you call it? Gulf of Thailand. Yeah. Koh Phangan, which is a small little island in just off the mainland of Thailand, which is it's a pretty cool place. So if anyone wants to go to a small place or an island that's got good energy and good feel and lots of love. And
one thing I want to say about it is it's mostly known for the full moon party, which is not something that I feel drawn to. It's just a whole bunch of drunk and high 19-year-olds, but a lot of people, it has a bad rap because of that, I think, and a lot of people think it's just a party island, and there's definitely parts of it that really are that, and you see it a lot, but it also has a much more peaceful, yoga-orientated side to it.
Sure does.
It's a really beautiful energy to kind of surrender into. Really is.
Toes, what would you say to someone who has never fasted before and they want to give it a crack? What would you say to them in terms of how to go about, if they wanted to try it? What would you recommend?
First off,
best way to ease into it?
Yeah, the first thing is to evaluate diet originally. So depending on where you're at, so if you've got something chronic, then you want to dive in a little bit more intensely. But if you're on a normal kind of meat eating and dairy eating diet, and you do eat some fruit and veg and so on, but you should probably do a little more, then the first thing to do is to try being vegan. I don't necessarily recommend doing any fasting at all to begin with. Try giving veganism a go to begin with, because if you give yourself, for example, 2 weeks on a vegan diet, and make it reasonably clean vegan diet, not too much junk food, not too much bread still, not pastas, all this kind of stuff, but if you can keep it to fruit and veg, then reintroduce something. After 2 weeks, eat a steak and see how you feel. Eat some cheese and see how you feel. And if you feel worse, your body's trying to tell you something. Some people, by the way, after they've done something for a little while, they will feel better, because meat, for example, is a stimulant, so it makes us feel better, and it's also ticking a lot of egoic past pattern boxes. That's how I would say. And also bring in a bit of intermittent fasting, so cut out breakfast straight away. We usually break up here, it's hot here, so we generally break our fast kind of late morning, maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock with a coffee or something. Back in Vilnius and back in Tunbridge Wells, when it wasn't 30 degrees every day, we would break our fast at sort of 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock in the afternoon with a litre of orange juice. No problem at all. And then we'd have like a 4-hour consuming food window. If you make your food window 8 hours or less to begin with, that's a really good place to start. The power of especially intermittent dry fasting is profound. The compounding effect over time is just ridiculous. But again, realise that you're in a cleansing phase, realise that your body's going to be going through some stuff, and you just got to start to become more sensitive to it and not judge it for getting sick or whatever, because listen to it.
especially if you're going to start with like you said, veggie, and just getting rid of meat and seeing how you feel and seeing what comes up just with that. If you feel like it didn't really do anything, then I suppose you go back to go. But even taking a small thing, something that you're so conditioned into, or so used to, just by tinkering around and having a bit of a play and experimenting, then you never know what doors will open due to that small shift.
Just make conscious decisions, and commit to it and do it for a period of time at least, so that it's had a chance. Give things a chance. But yeah, just give fasting a chance. Give veganism a chance if you're not already doing it.
Yeah, we've definitely seen the shifts and just going vegan and so much lighter but everyone's different. Everyone's got different bodies as well, and everyone's on their own journey. So it's just putting it out there and playing and enjoying and experimenting and learning and growing, and it goes on and on.
And this is the thing with fasting, is every time you do a fast, afterwards you always have something that you let go of, even if it's only one thing, even if it is. If you're full on eating everything kind of mode, even if it is bread that somebody just doesn't agree with you, and after doing a fast you drop bread and you feel a lot better for that. Brilliant, game on, enjoy that step.
Yeah.
Try another fast in another couple of months and see what else you can drop and feel better because you dropped it. There's no rushing, there's just process. And eventually you get to a point where you're like, oh, hold on, I think I'm going to drop a few more things here. I can probably not need to go back to a few more things. And suddenly you get to a point where you just eat
sticking with it.
Yeah.
Bro, I want to go back to what you were saying about where you had this breakup with this girl, and all of a sudden you were down in the dumps, and then all of a sudden you were like, shit, I'm not bulletproof, or I'm not I found a few chinks in my armor that this whole conditioning that you were in at the time, and then. And would I be right to say that you realised that you weren't quite what you thought you were at the time, and then so that sort of started this path to go and.
I guess so. It's more. It was kind of like the realisation of we can think of this version of ourselves, but there's quite often a very different version that comes out, and. Because of that environment that I then went into, I started to meet a lot of people who were really, really living very presently, and they were incredibly expressive versions of human beings. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of vibrancy here and energy. And the personal development space is an interesting one because it also attracts a lot of people who are really, really going through some stuff. So there's a lot of slightly hectic energy sometimes in these rooms. But they're very, on the whole, they're also very, very loving, kind, and gentle environment where people really just care. So for me, it was one of those experiences of like, well, this is an environment where everyone actually gives a fuck about me, and I give a fuck about them, and it's this reciprocated thing that feels a lot better than something that environments I feel like I've been in before. And even if the reality of the environments may have been different before, I wasn't able to see them from everywhere. I've always had some great friends and so on, but I haven't been able to receive necessarily love from friends like I can now, for example. So yeah, it was definitely a wake up to some false identities, and a wake up to living more on purpose and living a more aligned, awake life.
Would you
certainly set me on the path to it.
Would you say that with your shift, your wake up moment, where you sort of woke up and did, fuck, I want to live the way that I want to live, and time to start living and doing and being. Would you reckon that was that yours?
It was one of them, but it was early on. It was quite I've had lots of them because there's layers. We have them and then we fall into this next level of life where we end up creating all these patterns and these habits that aren't necessarily conducive to a purely fulfilled life. So I've had lots of them. Excuse me. One of the biggest ones wasn't actually a moment, but it was a period, and it was when I was 28, 27, 28, 2-3 years ago. And it was business. It was a business one, and it was because I had a huge success that then absolutely fell off the cliff.
Yeah.
And it was it happened over a period of months. So the success happened over a period of months, and then the downfall happened over a period of less months, but still months. And it was one of those things that I hadn't really realised what it took out of me in terms of the level of identity that I let go of, and in terms of the energy that I'd been putting into my life, the struggle, if you like, the challenge of every single day that I wasn't fulfilled, wasn't very happy. I realised I hadn't really turned off ever, probably. And again, Alice kind of came into my life at the same kind of time, but I was in a period where everything was falling down all around me, and all around us, if you like, us, my partners at the time. And there was, what could we do about it? Like, literally nothing. We were, I won't go into all the details, but it was a really, really, really big failure. And it just, I don't know, it just made me realise, well, one, firstly, I kind of saw that coming too. I've always had a story, but I always sort of see things coming, but not knowing how to be the person who could step in and stop them from happening, because they weren't my shit. Whether it was a blindness to a relationship, I didn't feel like I was the person who could step in and make a change. I knew what was going wrong, but I didn't know how to be the person to fix it. Or in business, I've always been a sort of junior to the people that have been around me, so therefore I haven't had the confidence or the kind of bollocks, if you like, to step in and actually say, no, like, this is going to go wrong, we need to do it this way or something. Because people always go, well, who are you to say that? What's your track record in this? How have you come to that conclusion? So I don't know, it's just instinct, like it's just, how can't you see it? That's what I've always thought in these situations. And so I've had loads of those in business and relationships, in my health as well. I've gone through phases where I've had a cold like every other month for years on end, and just kind of thought, well, I guess this is life, and had certain negative patterns reinforced, through childhood, which is, oh yeah, we're susceptible as a family to chest infections, for example. Well, I now know that's nonsense. Like, there's no such thing as being susceptible to a chest infection. Only if you're told so, and therefore you believe that. There's only one way that you can be susceptible to something. And even if something is perceived as hereditary, yes, you might have a genetic or predisposed lean towards something, but largely that's also to do with the intention that you've been given, which has been somebody else's intention. So if you're told, oh, you probably will get this around the age of 25, well, great, you've just given me fucking cancer, or you've just given me whatever disease it is, So I've always been very aware that, whenever somebody's told me something about reality, if it hasn't felt right, I've called them on it and I've gone, no, I don't think it. But the awakening points have been many and often.
And it's I'm just thinking, it takes a lot of courage you've obviously had this massive transformation over a long period of time, and it takes a lot of courage and willpower and strength and patience and understanding self and learning and discovery to stick with it. Like you said, you learn through your failures and all the things that your experiences or your failures that you've learned, and then it's sort of opened up a new door or a new window or a different path, taking you down a different path. There's a lot of people that sort of start off and have a couple of failures, and then like we were saying earlier, they get caught up in their mindset or conditioning, and then all of a sudden cycle back to where they were originally.
And a lot of that depends on how entrenched we were in the previous identities beforehand. So if we're I can't really speak from experience of having a 9 to 5, because I've only done it for 10 months of my life, and it was when I was in my mid-20s, so it was already something that was quite alien to me, because I'd already done a bit of entrepreneurial stuff. But I can imagine, if you've had a 9 to 5 or your entire 20s, and then at 30 you have a massive awakening, but it doesn't clear out enough of the old identities to allow you to fully embody the new realizations you've had about yourself. I can imagine it'd be really easy to fall back to a lot of things and try something, fail, and then go, oh well, I've still got a job over here, and just fall back into something that feels comfortable. But I think because every single year of my life has been radically different to the one previous to it, I've never had any inkling to fall back into anything particularly, except with love. I've always really challenged, I've always been quite challenged when it comes to relationships in terms of old patterns and so on, because they, for me, have been the most painful, they've been the most challenging to address, because they're the most personal, they're the most identity threatening quite often when we're in a love relationship. If it's real love, then it will trigger the fuck out of us. And it's supposed to, it's designed to, because you're supposed to see a mirror in that person. They're supposed to show you everything that you're not aware of in yourself. And it's, again, it's one of those opportunities we get to learn, okay, well, how do I respond to this person who's acting in a way perhaps that I'm not a fan of? How do I choose to love this person through this? Because clearly if they're triggered in a moment and I react to that trigger, then we're just going to get into a fight or whatever.
So something's got to change, something's got to give.
Yeah, you have to at some point make a decision and go, well, hold on, actually, I'm going to be the leader in this.
I'm going to be the leader, I'm going to own it.
Yeah.
I'm going to...
There's a great book by, what's his name?
Jocko Willink.
Jocko Willink. Yeah. I haven't read it yet, but I really would like to.
I haven't read it either, but we should both hit it up.
Get it on audio book and just lie down and listen to it on that. But yeah, I think, and a friend of mine actually, one of the guys I met when I did Billionaire Bootcamp and a few of the other Christopher Howard courses, it's a guy over in Australia called Cohen Ray, and he's one of the most phenomenal human beings I've ever come across, and the way that he's stepping into this version of him, which is not a version of him at all, it's just allowing, as we talked about earlier, allowing presence and energy to flow through him, drawing on all of his experiences of life, but ultimately drawing upon the universal energy, so that he's just channeling consciously.
Because I've seen his transformation as well. Yeah, he's been through massive transformation physically.
Well, he used to be a bodybuilder back in the day.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah. So he sort of had the underpinnings there, but he fell into a bit of a pattern and he had a bit of a dad bod and stuff. But more so, what he's been an amazing example for me of, and I think a lot of people have kind of witnessed this as well. He's been an incredible example of somebody who has allowed the camera on him. He's prolific on social media now. He's allowed that camera to be what it is, which is another mirror. If you record yourself a lot during the days, you get to then look at yourself. And if we get to look at ourselves, doing our habitual things every day, we get to look at where we're not showing up and how we're not showing up authentically. And he's been one of the most profound people I've ever seen of going through the transition of not being overly public about what he's doing, but he runs a similar business, a business transformation business. Not being overly public and on social media and so on, to being radically on so. Shout out to Gary Vee, because Gary Vee inspired him.
Gary Vee.
Click up again on that. To being someone who is vlogging every day, and we've got a team of probably 20 or so now, and a social media team, content team and so on, pumping content out, because everything that he's talking about now, he is living a very conscious and very present with a congruent life. His whole life is now congruent to what he, you see a 2-minute inspirational clip of him, that's what he really believes, that's who he is, that's how he lives.
You can really feel you can really feel his energy through his videos as well. I've watched a lot of videos in the past where you sort of, I don't know, you're either into it or you're not, and you can feel it or you don't. And every one of Kerwin Ray's videos, you can feel the energy, you can feel the goodness about it, and enjoy it. It's good. Yeah.
I think I'll see you sort of into the entrepreneurial world, because obviously entrepreneurialism is a little bit of a new space for you guys. Who's really resonating with you at the moment?
Entrepreneurial. You know what? Since coming to Thailand, it's been a complete. On this travel, it's cleaning out old identities as well and conditioning from the past. So with that had come a lot of things on social media, content, music. Like, man, I was looking through my laptop, and I've got a big iTunes playlist and going through some of these artists, 50 Cent, and these are people I used to listen to like 12 years ago, and I just do not. I'm well past that. I've moved on from that. And it's interesting just listening to some of that music, because I feel like I've gone back 12 years. So it's almost like evolving and bringing everything that matters to me along with me on the ride, evolving at the same time into a more aligned, authentic presence or being, and surroundings.
Yeah, your reality starts to show back what you really are and what you're doing and what you're doing.
Yeah. So another artist, who was it? 50 Cent was gone. A few rock artists. I remember when in my early teens in the mid 2000s, it was like Good Charlotte and who else?
It was like
Sum 41,
School parties.
Alien Ant Farm.
Yeah.
I mean, they were good at the time, and I went to a very sort of country European boarding hostel, and I was sort of the only Māori indigenous student in the whole hostel. But they got me hooked at the time. Everyone was into this sort of music. Anyhow, yeah.
How was that as an experience, and being the only one of your kind of kind, if you like, in an environment like that?
Yeah, like anything, it's a learning experience, and sometimes you're not aware of it at the time until you sort of come out of it, and then you're able to look back and say, oh, see it for what it was, and the good and the bad. But
Totally.
I was 12 when I went to boarding school, Palmerston North Boys High. Shout out, Palmerston North Boys High School. So I'd come from North Rotorua, which is a very strong Māori stronghold. In a Māori speaking home, strong cultural background, upbringing, and then I went to somewhere completely the opposite. We were 170 students and maybe 2 or 3 Māori. I think I was one of maybe two or three speakers in the 1,600 enrolled students at the school that could speak Māori. So yeah, it was definitely I was 12 to 18.
That's really interesting, because that was when I transitioned from public to private schools, and I kind of had the same sort of experience. It's like, I'm not the same as these people in a way. Like,
Yeah.
there's something different about this environment, and there's something different about these kids too. They're a lot more confident than any other kids I'd ever hung around with, which is very odd to me.
Would you say it opened up, like started to question things again in terms of conditioning? Yeah.
I think so. But also, like, you realise that there's
Your eagerness to know more, right? To like find more out and know what's out there, what's further out there.
Yeah, you get to choose. Like, you see that there's different ways of being confident, or there's different things that you're allowed to be confident at, I guess. I think we go through different phases of our lives where we realise, well, I'm not very good at this, but if I just choose to do it anyway and not be too worried about being confident about it, we can still learn things. And one of the greatest gifts we can ever give ourselves is be content with being a beginner at something.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether it's high school and you're starting out in a new sport for the first time. Like that, for me, that was like rugby and cricket and hockey. These are all new things to me, and all these kids have been doing them for 3 years already. So I was like, I'm behind. I felt behind and left out almost. Or whether it's stepping out and going into the entrepreneurial world and starting a business for the first time, like just be okay with being a bit shit at things for a little while, and you'll learn really, really fast, because if you're okay with it, you don't need to react to it and then have a massive emotional fucking identity crisis every time something goes wrong. Whereas if you just go, it's going to go wrong, just take that as a given and just get on with it and wait for it to not go as wrong as it probably would otherwise.
One of the things I used to do, and probably still do now, is I would, sport, for example, if I wanted to get better at something, I'd always challenge people who were so good, who were really good at it, who were, yeah.
That's cool.
But I love challenge, and I always found, that might be terrible for them. I'm thinking of times I played tennis, and I was calling out some of my friends, and I was saying, "Hey, come play tennis with me." And they were probably like, "Oh, fuck, really?" But for me, I was like, yeah, I just wanted to. I found that was a really, I learned incredibly faster than I would have had I just chucked along with someone who was my ability or lower. And you see that. Sometimes I see, you play rugby, or the All Blacks are playing a lower team, and all of a sudden you drop down, you lower down to the level of the opposition or the people that you're around, and that can be anywhere, eh? Your surroundings.
Absolutely, and this is why there's a lot of quotes around like you are the sum of the fact that you spend their time with yourself. If you're looking to make a change, you cannot be around anyone who still reinforces the version of you that you're looking to leave behind. And even if it's for only a short period of time, sometimes you just have to let go of everyone, because they just don't get the fact that you've changed, and that's okay. They don't have to get it. Hopefully they love you enough to say, hey, you're changing and I don't quite get it, but all good, you go do your thing. Hopefully you have people around you that are, loving enough like that. But quite a lot of the time, if we've got sort of sleepy people around us, as they can be known, then that won't necessarily be the case, and they'll really be challenged by your change, and that's okay. We have to learn to live with people not accepting us, because especially when you jump on the path and you start injecting ayahuasca into things and stuff, your rate of change goes up radically, and you start to be a very, very different person, and then we start to realise it's actually all on us, for us to accept that
Exactly.
others not necessarily changing, and that's okay.
And it doesn't have to be, yeah, you did right, and it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be permanent either, it could be just a bit of time to yourself, just to, to do your thing, and then come back, and, and if you've done the work, and you've done, you've got what you wanted to, or what you were needing, then you can come back into it, and it's fine. It's you don't have to completely detach yourself. Yeah.
But again, it becomes a choice.
Choices.
You get to go, well, this is something that I left behind for a reason. Maybe I left it behind for a season. Maybe I left it behind for a lifetime. And either one is okay. No identity that we take on in our lives is permanent. None of them are true. None of them at all are true. It doesn't matter what it is from a heritage of our lineage and where we come from and so on. That's just a story at the end of the day. It's just a version of reality that a whole bunch of people collectively had, and therefore told the story moving forward, and then involved it into the people that descended them. Or whether it's a relationship, whether it's a business, whether it's whatever it is, it's just a story at the end of the day. And if the way that it's being written by your life isn't the way that you feel you want anymore, you get to rewrite it and change it and make it look different. And if we then interact with and bring in and roll in people from our past again, it might work, but quite often it just slows us down, and we just have to stay in our lanes, and let them be the example, be the change they want to see.
Well, it's definitely something that in terms of following you over the years, and obviously getting to know you over a period of time, is I really admire, and I can definitely resonate. It definitely resonates with aspects of my journey. Is you taking that step, that courage, and stepping out, and deciding that no, this is not how I want to live my life. I'm going to go and create that reality that I want for myself, and that's how I want to live. Because it's we've touched on it already, but detaching yourself, it takes a lot of balls to do that. It takes a lot of balls, a lot of just guts, and
my journey's been one of those things where not that many of the decisions that I've taken have actually taken that many guts. Life's just shown up and it's knocked me out. It's that's over now, and it's and then something else has come in, which has been something that's been more easy to say yes to, and it's been a little bit more in alignment with who I think I am at that point. And this is the thing with life, is that there's no kind of direct line to how life looks. It's highs and lows, and the highs and lows just get more and more even and less dramatic. And they just need to be less dramatic. When we live a more balanced life, we don't need the extreme highs that we need when we're in our early 20s from drugs or from alcohol or from sex or from whatever it might be. And we get to live a different existence whereby everything's just more balanced and everything feels better if we choose correctly along the way. Not correctly, but more wisely. But it becomes more and more wise, and therefore, as the wisdom kind of increases, the level of drama in the things that don't go right gets less and less dramatic, gets less and less impactful, and so on. So for me, I've actually really struggled with self-confidence and so on. So the decisions I've taken, they may have looked quite impressive from the outside or whatever, but actually they were just the thing that made most sense at the time for me to do. They didn't seem very, they didn't necessarily seem very drastic. They just seemed obvious. And I think, again, this is when we quite often have the highest levels of clarity until we really embed with meditation, etc., 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 is that sometimes we have the biggest moments of clarity when something really goes wrong.
Yeah.
Everything suddenly makes sense, and you go, fuck's sake, I knew it. We get it at that point, and we know exactly what we need to do. And the only balls that we need are to act on that clarity. But usually when something's really clear, it's actually quite easy to do, because there's all the resistance and all the things that were blocking it before kind of just disintegrate and just start to become meaningless. So as long as we can pay attention to those meanings, those moments rather, those opportunities in life, it gets flowy, it gets more and more flowy and more
just to know that you've stuck with it, you know, even through the good and the bad and the uglies and the, you know, talked about, you know, sometimes you find things out that are good to the ego, and then you find things that the ego doesn't quite like. But just to be able to stick with it, and then just keep going and going until you finally find that place of real peace and connection. And I mean, you're a radiance of peace and love, and, you know, very calm, and a really calming presence to be around. And you know, it's just, you've stuck, yeah, like I said, you're stuck with it, and not sort of.
But it's not really ever something that I considered a choice. You know, I think when we start to realise, hold on, I get to choose.
Yeah.
Things that feel good in my life. Like, I get to choose a life that feels better. When you do things that make you feel better, you don't really ever. Of course, we have to eventually, you know, we have to let go of patterns, and sometimes that can involve a big emotional thing and so on, or sometimes it can involve then a massive physical manifestation in life with something going wrong. But if we are, you know, the more conscious we become, the more, as I said earlier, the less dramatic things are. But because every level feels better, and because every level feels lighter, there's never really any turning back. You might slip back for a little while, but eventually you get back on the train and you carry on trucking. And I think for me, it's just always been a process of releasing, letting go, feeling the pain, feeling the emptiness quite a lot, because quite often when something gets taken away from us, we feel very empty for a while. But knowing that in pain is beauty, you know, quite often our darkest times, we allow ourselves to feel those dark times, it take us long to feel through the other side and realise, wow, that was a really big thing, like I was really holding on to that really tightly, and now that I'm not, yeah, it hurts, but I never felt more alive, you know. I've never felt more alive than some of the times when I've been heartbroken in whatever way it may be, you know, but my heart's burst open because it's so real, it's so impacting to my identity that I'm trying to uphold in this moment. It feels so good, you know, it's so addictive, that pain becomes really addictive, and I think you get to a point where you're just like, if this hurts, like I said earlier, just, like, turn it up, like, dive in even more, and let's see where it can take me, because on the other side, the more this hurts, the more I allow this to hurt, if it has the potential to hurt, the greater the expansion. Man,
so many lessons in there for all of us. Man, I really appreciate your time, Tobes, and
enjoy this.
for really appreciate you taking your time and spending a bit of time with us and opening the floor and yeah, man, good stuff.
Thank you both so much as well. Like, it's so good to have you guys out here. I can't even say it. It's so good to spend time with people who are on the journey and embracing it and buying bits of podcasting equipment on their journey so that they can actually just get on with it and start a podcast.
Well, so while we were in America, Toby left. We were in America for what? So we've been on the road for about 7 weeks, and you left about the same time, didn't you? You left Lithuania at the same time, and Toby's been constantly posting about Thailand and telling us to come here, and, you know, the fruit and the nature and the simplicity of living and reconnection to everything has it sort of kept nudging us, and then finally we're here. We're in the same room in the podcast. So once again, really good, bro.
Life, man. Isn't that awesome?
All right.
Pleasure, guys.
All the best. Cheers, bro.